Have you ever had a reaction that felt completely justified in the moment, but later, after you had time to calm down, you wondered why it felt so intense? Maybe someone didn't respond to your text and you immediately assumed that they were upset with you. Or maybe a coworker gave you feedback and your body reacted as though she had just punched you in the gut. Or perhaps someone was slow to help you and suddenly you felt angry, dismissed, or determined to take control. In moments like these, we often believe we are simply reacting to what is happening now, but that's not always the full story. Sometimes we are reacting not only to the present, but also to what the present reminds us of. The past does not remain neatly behind us. It becomes part of the lens through which the brain interprets what is happening in the present. Our brains are constantly using previous experiences to make predictions. They take in what is happening around us, compare it with similar experiences from the past, and then make a best guess about what is likely to happen next and what we should do. This process happens quickly, and it's usually outside our conscious awareness. And when we react automatically, the brain will usually choose whatever it predicts is most likely to keep us safe. And because the brain is tasked with keeping us safe, it pays particular attention to anything painful or threatening. So, whenever the present situation is similar to a negative experience in the past, we'll automatically feel distraught. And this can be incredibly useful. It allows us to learn from past experiences, and it helps us recognize danger more quickly. If you once touched a hot stove, you do not need to conduct a careful investigation every time you see a hot stove. Your brain has learned that heat can burn you and prepares you to be cautious. If you have driven on icy roads before, you may just automatically slow down when the temperatures drop and the pavement looks slick. Learning from the past is one of the ways that our brain protects us. But the brain's predictions are not always accurate. Sometimes it responds to the present as though we are still living in the past. Imagine, for example, that you once received poor care from a doctor. Perhaps your concerns were dismissed. You tried to explain that something was wrong, but no one seemed to be listening. And then your condition worsened, and you eventually had to be hospitalized. That experience would understandably be very upsetting. You may have felt powerless, frightened, and ignored at a time when your health was genuinely at risk. And your brain would make a point of remembering that experience and of keeping an eye out for any signs of anything similar. And we know from research that the brain highlights painful or negative events in an effort to ensure that we recognize anything similar in the future. So as a result, it might develop a rule such as, if people are not responding to me, I need to become louder and more forceful. Or, if I don't take control, something bad might happen. Either response may have developed for a very good reason. After all, you didn't get what you needed, and your health was at risk. Thinking back, you may have concluded that becoming more forceful may have helped you receive the care that you needed. So your brain learned from that experience. But here's the problem. The brain does not always distinguish perfectly between situations that are truly the same or just somewhat similar. So here's an example. Say you've had that experience with the doctor, and then later you find yourself receiving poor service at a restaurant. If the server is slow, or your order is wrong, or no one seems to be paying attention to you, your brain detects something that resembles the earlier experience of being ignored by your doctor, and then your brain sounds the alarm. Suddenly, you'll feel stressed and think, I need to complain. I need to get louder. I cannot let them dismiss me like this. You'll feel physically distraught, so this big reaction will feel justified in the moment. But your nervous system is now responding to your restaurant experience as though you are back in the doctor's office and your health is on the line. The two situations share certain features, but they are not the same. In one, you were frightened, vulnerable, and potentially in danger. In the other, you were frustrated because your dinner order is wrong or the service is slow. Now, this does not mean that the restaurant experience is acceptable or that you should not speak up. It means, however, that the intensity of your reaction may be shaped by more than what is happening right now. The brain is not simply recording the present like a camera. It is interpreting the present. And it interprets the present by drawing on what it has learned from the past. So this is also why two people can experience the same event very differently. Imagine that two people send a text to a friend and do not receive an answer. One person might think, they're probably busy. I'll hear from them later. But the other person immediately begins to worry. Did I say something wrong? Did they not like what I wrote? Are they angry with me? The unanswered message is the same for both of them, but the meaning created by each person's brain is different. Someone who has experienced dependable, consistent relationships may not interpret silence as threatening, while someone with a history of rejection, abandonment, or unpredictable relationships may experience that same silence very differently. Their brain may have learned that distance can be the beginning of loss. So their brain's going to prepare them. It generates worry, anxiety, and an urge to seek reassurance. Again, the response is not irrational. It doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from past learning. And it comes from the brain trying to protect us based on what has happened before. So we can see this in many areas of life. A neutral expression on someone's face may feel threatening if you grew up around unpredictable anger. And constructive feedback may feel humiliating if mistakes were harshly punished in the past. And someone asking for space may feel like abandonment if closeness was unreliable for you. And a disagreement may feel like the beginning of the end if conflict in your family was dangerous or never repaired. So the brain notices a familiar pattern and predicts what it believes is coming next. And once that prediction is made, the body responds accordingly, and the nervous system will get activated. Your heart might begin to race, your muscles might tighten, your breathing may become shallow. And you may feel an urge to argue or to withdraw, defend yourself, or maybe to try to please the other person, or somehow just regain control. And then the physical sensations seem to confirm the brain's interpretation. I feel anxious, so something must be wrong. I feel threatened, so this person must be threatening me. I feel rejected, so I must be getting rejected. But emotions are not always proof that our interpretation is accurate. They're simply signals. They tell us how the brain is interpreting the situation based on the information it has available about our current situation and our memory of similar situations from the past. So this is where mindfulness becomes so helpful. Mindfulness creates a small amount of space between the brain's prediction and that seemingly automatic reaction. Instead of immediately assuming that our first interpretation is the truth, we can learn to become curious about it. And most importantly, we can learn to pause before reacting and ask, What is happening right now? What does the situation remind me of? Is my reaction only about this moment, or is something older also being activated? And perhaps most importantly, does this situation require the same response that I needed in the past? Now, these questions are not meant to talk us out of our feelings, and they're not a way of telling ourselves that we are overreacting or that our concerns don't matter. And the goal is not to judge the brain for making these predictions. After all, that's what brains do, and it's in an effort to keep us safe. With mindfulness, the goal is to notice the prediction before we automatically react. Now, you might still decide that you need to speak up, or you might recognize that someone's behavior really is dismissive or harmful. Mindfulness does not require us to ignore genuine problems. It helps us respond to the problem that is actually in front of us rather than automatically reacting to every problem that it resembles. One simple practice that you can try is to pause and name both the present and the past. The next time you feel distraught, you might notice whether what is happening now feels familiar. You can pause, take a look around, and see if your level of stress is warranted. You can also consider all of your options. Perhaps in your current situation, there are more choices now. Maybe you can leave, or maybe you can ask a direct question, or maybe you can get some more information. Perhaps the person in front of you is not the person who hurt you before. Or maybe the current situation is uncomfortable, but not dangerous. So this kind of awareness helps the brain update its predictions. And each time we pause, notice an old pattern, and respond differently, we give the brain new information. And that way we teach it that silence does not always mean rejection, that feedback does not always mean humiliation, that conflict does not always mean the relationship is ending. Being overlooked does not always mean that we are in danger. So it's really remembering that the past shapes our perceptions, but it doesn't have to determine them. Our reactions often developed for understandable reasons. They may have once helped us feel safer, help us stay connected, avoid harm, or regain a sense of control. And we do not need to criticize ourselves for having them. But we can learn to recognize when an old protective response has entered a new situation. And in that moment of recognition, we have a little more freedom. We can pause, we can look again, and we can ask, what is happening now? And what response does this moment actually require? So see if you can give that a try at some point in the next week or so, and experiment for yourself. And if this video was helpful to you in any way, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. And I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.